Tomorrow night, President Biden will deliver his second State of the Union address. He does this as the nation and Congress are divided on what the priorities should be for the next 2 years. I am joined by Virginia Tech political science professor Karen Hult. Karen, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Of course.
Karen, this speech really sets the stage for what's expected to be a consequential battle between President Biden and House Republicans. What do you think will be some of the big takeaways from the president's speech tomorrow, given that, yes, we are a divided Congress?
Well, there is a divided Congress, and I would expect the president to start on that very point, congratulating the Republicans for having won the House, congratulating Speaker McCarthy for taking over that position. At the same time, I would expect the president to pivot fairly quickly to talking about the many accomplishments that his administration has already made and to talk about paths for the future, including things that both parties might be able to work together on.
So last week, the president traveled right here to Maryland, went to Pennsylvania, New York. He was touting his transportation projects, other projects funded by his infrastructure package. And in fact, they're supposed to take this talk to 20 more states to really talk up their economic agenda. Talk to me about how critical the economy will be in this speech tomorrow night, because a lot of Americans, no matter how the numbers are looking like right now, are still struggling at this moment.
Yeah, the economy clearly is important for a whole lot of reasons. Certainly, I expect the president to tout the fact that inflation is slowing, that the employment numbers look very good, and that progress is being made. At the same time, I also expect him to really say very clearly, I understand that people are still suffering, and what we need to do is to double down on the efforts so far and continue to work to grow the economy and try to keep inflation in check.
Do you think that there are any tactics he's going to come to play tomorrow night in trying to push some of his agenda that, unfortunately, House Republicans are most likely going to be blocking?
Well, that's a great question. In terms of tactics, one thing he will try to do is make the best case he can to the country, and also, again, to underscore areas in which there is some sense that there is majority public support for a whole range of things. And that could range from reproductive rights to taking care of problems with race and policing and a whole variety of climate change kinds of issues. But certainly what the president's going to try to do is to really make very clear what he has done and what he hopes to continue to do, working hard as president of the United States.
What do you think is going to be his biggest challenge for tomorrow night's speech, given the current state of our country right now?
There are so many. Of course, he's speaking to a whole range of different audiences, not only in Congress before him, to a domestic audience and to an international audience as well. People around the world are taking a look to see the extent to which democracy and representative democracy in the United States remains somewhat stable. And that means he will need to balance a whole range of goals and objectives in his speech, while at the same time ensuring that people see him as a steady, stable, energetic leader. Many, many challenges, but that's what he'll be trying to do.
The war in Ukraine continues. China relations, of course, in the forefront of the news lately. Do you think he'll be making any big announcements on the international front?
Big announcements is less clear. I think what he may do is certainly underscore that the United States has been a leader in addressing the difficulties with Russia invading Ukraine and assembling and keeping assembled a strong alliance. He also will seemingly have to hit very hard on China and make the point that the latest brouhaha over the balloon was not as serious as it might be, but the United States is in fact steadfast in its efforts to counter China and also to pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the world, including protecting Taiwan. So a whole range of challenges in front of the president tomorrow night.
Yeah, and how much of his speech do you think will be dedicated to kind of setting the stage for 2024?
Well, that's the undercurrent of all of this, I suppose. But certainly a lot of it will be paying attention to that. Now, that's the other balancing issue, of course. Set the stage for what he hopes to do in 2024, but at the same time, focus on what has been accomplished and the hard work that he hopes to do over the next 2 years. A very difficult balancing act, once again.
Karen, thank you so much for your expertise tonight and for joining us. We'll have to be watching closely to see exactly how the president handles this on his second State of the Union address. Again, Virginia Tech political science professor Karen Hult, thanks for your time.
Thank you.